Hello, welcome to my channel. It's honestly not all that easy being a monster. You know, when you live in the 21st century, we have a lot of different things to worry about. You know, like how the world is ending because of climate change, the threat of nuclear war, the new Marvel series everyone's obsessed with. If you're a monster, can't really blame anyone for thinking that. You know, maybe it's easier to be human. That's why I have some sympathy for the monsters in today's creepypasta. They just want to fit in sometimes. You see, our story begins with a group of friends who decided to go camping one weekend. Because what's more quintessentially human than camping? I mean, aside from, murdering your fellow man, but hey, different strokes. This group consisted of two couples and a guy named Jake. Everyone was pretty young and very much into partying, so naturally they brought a shit ton of beer. They drove down into the woods and set up camp near a clearing, which was nice because it meant they could build a campfire and stay warm. No need to trudge through the forest to collect wood whenever they needed to restock their fire because the branches in the clearing were already dead and dry. I mean, perfect for burning. I guess it was also nice because it meant they didn't need flashlights to play with. All they had to do was keep the fire going and the light would come right to them. The group spent the afternoon drinking and playing music. There was no reception out here, so they were completely cut off from civilization. By the time the sun dipped below the tree line, they had drunk enough beer that they were feeling a little frisky. So they began playing a game of spin the bottle, which apparently ended with Jake smashing a bottle over Caleb's head. Sorry, Caleb. I don't think that's how you win friends and influence people. But hey, who am I to judge? They spent the rest of the evening playing card games and telling scary stories. Not the best idea considering they were in the middle of nowhere and any noise they made would attract the attention of every wild animal in the forest. Also, it's rude to tell people scary stories when they're drinking. I've learned that one the hard way. As the night wore on, the party died down and the friends started heading off to bed. They slept into tents, the couples in one tent and Jake in the other. I'm sure you can guess why. But it is also possible that the couples were worried about hearing more of Jakey's really good ghost stories. In the morning, they all woke up to the smell of pine needles and regret. Jake was the first to wake up and he stayed in his tent for a while, drinking the last of his beer. When he finally emerged, he found the other four staring at the ground. He asked them what was wrong and they told him they couldn't remember. All they knew was that they felt incredibly tired and sore and they had a sudden urge to go home. Jake joined them at the fire and they started making breakfast. In the quiet, one of the guys, I forget his name, I'm sorry, swears he hears a noise in the trees. He tried to describe it, but all he could come up with was that it sounded like a person screaming in pain. I'm sorry, did I say person? I meant animal. Yeah, definitely an animal. But then again, I guess humans are technically animals too, aren't we? Anyway, they finished breakfast, packed up their stuff and headed home. Okay, now I feel like I should let you know that none of this happened exactly as I am telling it. Like, there were some gaps in the timeline where certain events were missing. Like, we don't know if the campfire was still going when they went to sleep. And there's no mention of how long they actually stayed in the forest. I only know these things because I asked ChatGap to fill in the blanks. Otherwise, I would have assumed that they stayed there for days, which, it's better that way. But yeah, the thing about asking AI to write things for you is that sometimes it gets a little carried away. Sometimes too many details are added. And in the case of this story, the details are pretty terrifying. Okay, anyway, apparently while they were driving away, one of the girls notices that there's blood on her hands. None of them had cut themselves the day before, so they all stared at their hands in confusion. Then they looked at each other and slowly realized that they couldn't remember anything about the day before. They drank a lot of beer, sure, but that wouldn't explain why they had absolutely no recollection of the previous day. And it definitely wouldn't explain the blood. They drive the rest of the way home in silence, which is weird because these people were party people. They loved to laugh and joke around, especially when there was alcohol involved. The fact that they were silent during the car ride was concerning. And when they got to the house, they refused to go inside. They all sat on the porch steps staring at the ground. Again, it was uncharacteristic of them to be so silent, especially since no one had been injured. After a while, the girl whose hand was covered in blood, I think her name was Tiffany, finally broke the silence. She asked the others if they remembered seeing a tall, hunched figure between the trees the night before. They all looked up at her, startled. because she hadn't mentioned any of this at the gas station. Apparently, the girl had tried to get rid of the blood by washing her hands in a stream, but the water hadn't done anything. She had scrubbed her hands raw trying to remove it, but it was impossible. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't wash it off. Now that she mentioned it, the others did remember seeing someone in the trees. They described him as tall and gaunt, like he was made of sticks and shadows. He had been standing perfectly still, watching them the whole time. And despite his size, they swore they could hear bones cracking under his skin. His face was hidden in the darkness, but they all agreed that it looked like a goat skull, hence the nickname Goatman. And if that sounds like a creature from legend, well, you're not wrong. The Goatman is a cryptid said to inhabit the woods of the south. It's known for killing people and wearing their skins, which means that it probably lives somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. Now, according to folklore, the Goatman often appears in the form of a human, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it takes the form of a specific human. Instead, it seems to take on the form of whoever is closest to it, meaning that if it's watching a group of people, it could take on the appearance of anyone in that group. The worst part is that the Goatman isn't satisfied with simply observing its victims. It usually kills them. And if it takes on the appearance of one of the group members, it will either eat them alive or pretend to be them until it has a chance to escape. And what makes the Goatman so terrifying is that it is not always clear which member of your group it is taken. You might think you recognize your friend, but how can you be sure? Maybe you are really just looking at a pile of bloody meat that looks kind of like your friend. I mean, really, how do you tell the difference? This is obviously a nightmare scenario, which is why most people try to avoid hiking alone. Yeah, the whole traveling with a group thing is for a reason. Now, I don't know why these kids didn't just pack up and leave when they saw the Goatman. I mean, if there's one thing I've learned from watching so many videos on YouTube, it's that if you see the Goatman, you should get the hell out of there because if you stick around, you're gonna get killed. Anyway, after realizing that they had been visited by the Goatman, the group split up and ran into the woods, hoping that the dense foliage would hide them. They screamed for help and ran in random directions. They tripped over tree roots and scratched themselves on rocks, but they didn't care. They just kept running until they collapsed from exhaustion. When they woke up, they were lying next to each other in a big pile. They had somehow all ended up in the same place. They huddled together for a moment, trying to catch their breath. Then they checked themselves for injuries. They were all badly bruised, but they were unharmed. Still, they didn't want to stay there. They wanted to get home. So they started walking along the forest floor. They were careful to stick to the trees, believing that the Goatman would be watching them from above. After a few hours, they finally stumbled upon the road. They walked towards it, desperate to see cars passing by, desperate to see any sign of civilization. But their hope quickly faded. It was late at night and no cars were coming. Exhausted, they curled up on the side of the road and fell asleep. In the morning, they woke up and finally saw cars passing by. One of them even stopped and offered them a ride to the nearest gas station. When they arrived, they split up again and went their separate ways. As for the Goatman, well, no one knows if he ever left the woods. Some say he still roams the forest, watching travelers and waiting for them to wander off the path. And if you ever see him, you should run because trust me, he's not worth the trouble. Thanks for listening. What do you think? Do you believe in the Goatman? Let me know in the comments. Also, if you liked this video, please hit the thumbs up button. That would be a huge help.